decisions that you made, and you working with Richard Beamer and sort of how you guys would play off each other. How did that chemistry develop?
Well, there wasn't so much discussion about the background of the character, but I do remember coming up at one point, and I think I intuited it from Barry Gifford's novel For Wild at Heart, that there was something going on about the Kennedy thing. And Kyle's first line, and I think it was the first episode, was about who pulled the trigger on Kennedy and what went on with Marilyn Monroe and them. And so I think David did in fact mention, or maybe I'm hallucinating, I don't know, at this point, 23 years later, about the Kennedy brothers. But I got to say that, that I'm a Kennedy Democrat. I saw both John Kennedy and Robert Kennedy. There's even a photo from Detroit Free Press, Pulitzer Prize winning photographer Tony Spina, with me in my junior high class standing in front of Robert Kennedy. So I love the Kennedy brothers and ideals and everything else. That said, I thought that the Horns were sort of based on the National Enquirer version of the Kennedys. And everything bad that you ever imagined or read about the Kennedy brothers, they were going to embody. And so that's what we started with, and I think I was trying to think of that demarcation line of before and after the assassination, how terrible it was. It was really, really terrible. I was 12 years old and John Kennedy was assassinated. It was sort of the end of the 50s. He was 63, but it was sort of the end of this kind of fake innocence of the 1950s into the wild and insane 1960s. And so I was reading Ayn Rand and trying to see what assassination people were into, and I thought of this haircut, and I just showed up, with the haircut, and he said that's okay, so things like that, I think I even stuck that one line in when we're with the Icelanders, that we are all Icelanders. And it's okay with that, mimicking, you probably don't, you know what that is? We are all Berliners, that speech. So, things like that, but it was just an amazing creative thing. I was so thrilled to be a part of it. Really, it was like being in the Beatles for a couple of minutes there, and was really in awe of folks, Kyle and all the rest of them who were there all the time doing it. And I have a really silly question for you, Kyle. It's the question that actors hate a lot, so I hope you'll forgive me, which is, how did you do all those lines, man? Because you had like volumes at times. I bet it's probably overnight too. Sometimes you had to.
Yes.
Was that a struggle?
I turned the tape recorder around and would record all the speeches that I had and listen to them back and play back and forth. So, and that's how it worked. It was that. The one in particular that jumps out, of course, was the one I mentioned before, the first drive up the mountain. And it's a funny thing, you learn something, and you think you have it down pretty cold, and then they put you behind the wheel of a car, and then they ask you to do business, like take a tape recorder out and then look at something and pull your wallet and do this stuff. And all the lines that you knew so well, sitting in a chair concentrating, just go right out of your head. So we had this a couple times. That's the thing about television too, especially about that. I remember we had like a couple of takes, and you just run through it and hope that there's a couple cameras going so you can cut back and forth and get the good bits. And so it wasn't always seamless as it appeared. So,
Julie, would you mind taking us behind the scenes of a creation of one of your favorite songs from this project? Where did the song start from, and how does the orchestration mix in? How does the writing develop?
Well, for me, to begin with, I was fumbling along trying to find this character, because I'm a classically trained French horn player, and it's all about music, and I don't know really where. I was also, very, very young, and being really proficient, and university. So it was really ingrained in me. And then, of course, you know, music from my brother who went to Berkeley, you know, 1969 and all of that. But meeting Angelo, who was, you know, a maestro, you know, just a maestro, it was really finding a side of myself that I did not want to be. And that was beautiful and soft and vulnerable, and, you know, that was hard. That was hard. I'll talk about The World Spins, because that, to me, is the best song I've ever gotten a chance to sing, I think. I didn't know. I mean, none of the music was for, The World Spins was not for a particular scene. It was for the CD. And Angelo and David and it started out with Angelo and I doing Mysteries of Love. And he didn't want me. He wanted me to find him someone that had this angelic voice, and he had all these lyrics scribbled on a piece of paper. It was from David. And I had no one to imitate. There wasn't anyone I could think of other than maybe early jazz, Shirley Horn, maybe. And I don't know. I just brought my head voice down. And Angelo would get the key right, because that's extremely important, in the tone, in the mood, everything. I mean, it's so important, and people don't really realize that. But all three of us would be in a room with the key, and David would have these obscure lyrics that were so beautiful, so sparse, and so difficult to emulate, to actually try to do that yourself. And but Angelo it was like a call and response, and then I was the one to drive the car, right? And it took us a whole year.
You mean call and response between David and Angelo?
Yeah, they could really read each other well.
Yeah.
And I'm such a perfectionist, and so is Angelo. And David likes flaws, happy accidents. So, you know, we kept that vulnerability into it as long as it was in tune. Because we were on analog then. Still to this day, I don't want anyone messing with my pitch. But it was all about the mood. Everything was about the mood. I was being directed as an actress in the booth, and Angelo was creating the music with David as the director of the entire thing. And when we bring musicians in, like we brought Grady Tate in, who's one of the greatest, I don't even know if Grady's still alive. He's one of the greatest drummers ever. Now that's really hard music to play drums with, you know? I mean, what do you do? So Grady sat there, it was about 11 a.m., and then he excused himself, and he was gone for like an hour, and he came back smashed. He did one take, and did the whole album, did the whole damn thing. The brushes, you know, the thing, it was just absolutely perfect. And, you know, we were very lucky in that sense that Angelo was very connected with all these guys. He grew up with them in Brooklyn. And I think Angelo and I both were very malleable too. You could make us into something. It's like, you know, check your ego at the door. There's no room for it. And David tried to be one of us. So it worked out so nice. And like I said, it was we always had turkey and cheese. Turkey and cheese for lunch on wheat bread. I had extra mayonnaise. Sometimes, you know, Angelo would balk at that one, but, and chips. So making that music was the funnest time I've ever had. It was really exciting. I didn't think there'd be any way it would go anywhere. I just thought, what a great experience. This is really fun. It's really hard to do. It's a bitch, and I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. And I listened to the dailies, you know, just our little cassettes of the mixes, and I go, oh God, no! Oh no, that's just awful. How are they gonna do this? And I guess, well, to this day, I don't listen to myself. I don't watch myself. I don't like it. I just don't like it. I'm a stage performer primarily. That's what I like. And boy, walking in on that set I was awestruck. I had no idea. You know, there's big cameras all over the place, and the music was playing, and everyone had already listened to a lot of the music and gotten that ingrained in their head. It was really fascinating to watch both Angelo and David work together.
Yeah, there's a video, I don't know if you've seen it, of Angelo by himself talking about David. He just has this old Fender Rhodes piano,
Yeah.
and he put a cassette player on top of it, and David sat right at the corner
Right.
and just talked and literally conducted him right through the theme, the opening theme. He just described it like a dream.
Yeah.
Just,
And Angelo could, of course, he'd go ahead. I mean, Angelo would take off, and then David would have to keep up with Angelo. So it's not all David as a director. I mean, Angelo certainly knows his stuff. And they went to the Prague Symphony. So they went to Prague, where there was just like maybe a potato on one shelf and some underwear in a package here. And that's how we got the strings. And they were really,
So,
you
could you
know.
just explain that a little bit?
That didn't come out right, did it? The Prague Symphony Orchestra, it was much, much cheaper to use them instead of using American. They were quite too expensive, the symphony.
So the video that you guys just described, I've seen it on YouTube. And speaking of which, David, there's another video on YouTube that I believe says something like Twin Peaks summed up in 1 minute. And it's literally Ray Wise bursting into Ben and Jerry's office singing Mersey Notes. And what I love about that scene is that it's so has such a spontaneous feel to it, you know. And we've heard a little bit about, you know, Richard Beamer's tap dancing that absolutely had to be incorporated into the show. I'm curious to know a little bit about some of the happy accidents that you might have been involved in with something like that, a scene like that, where, you know, it seems like, you know, it's on the one hand not necessarily a major plot point, but adds so much value to the tone and the experience of watching the show.